The sweltering heat of a July afternoon in Oklahoma bore down on Sergeant Jack "Bulldog" Cooper as he stood in the shadow of the massive dropship. His muscular frame, honed by years of military service and a childhood spent on his family's farm, tensed with anticipation. Sweat beaded on his forehead, trickling down his weathered face as he surveyed the bustling spaceport around him. In less than an hour, he'd be leaving Earth behind, embarking on humanity's boldest venture yet. The thought should have filled him with pride, but instead, a knot of tension coiled in his gut. Jack wasn't one for politics or grand gestures. He preferred simple solutions usually involving his fists or a well-placed bullet. This mission, with all its talk of diplomacy and galactic councils, made him uneasy. "Hey, Bulldog," a voice called out, cutting through his reverie. "You gonna stand there admiring that hunk of metal all day, or are you gonna help us load these crates?" Jack turned, his steely gaze falling on Private Rodriguez, who was struggling with a large container marked classified. The young soldier's face was red with exertion, his uniform already soaked through with sweat. With a grunt, Jack strode over and easily lifted the crate with one hand. "Take it easy, kid," he growled. "Wouldn't want you to strain something before we even leave Atmo." Rodriguez gaped at Jack's display of strength, then quickly closed his mouth and nodded. "Yes, Sergeant. Thanks." As they worked, loading the last of the supplies onto the dropship, Jack's mind wandered to the task ahead. The torn asunder humanity's most advanced battleship waited in orbit. Its name seemed fitting for the mission they were about to undertake. Jack had seen the classified briefings. He knew what that ship was capable of. The thought of it made him both proud and terrified. "All personnel, final boarding call," a voice boomed over the spaceport's PAS system. "Dropship departure in T-20 minutes." Jack secured the last crate and made his way to the passenger compartment. As he strapped himself into the acceleration seat, he couldn't help but think of home. The farm he'd left behind, the family he hadn't seen in years. He'd joined the Marines to see the stars, to prove he was more than just some hick from Oklahoma. Now, as Earth's gravity prepared to release its hold on him, he wondered if he'd made the right choice. The dropship's engines roared to life, drowning out the chatter of nervous soldiers and technicians. Jack closed his eyes, picturing the old barn back home, the fields of wheat swaying in the breeze, and stubborn Pete, the old donkey that had been his childhood companion. Initiating launch sequence, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Hold on to your butts, ladies and gentlemen. Next stop, low Earth orbit." With a deafening rumble, the dropship lifted off. Jack felt the familiar pressure of acceleration pushing him back into his seat. As they punched through the atmosphere, leaving behind the only world humanity had known for millennia, Sergeant Jack "Bulldog" Cooper allowed himself one last moment of sentiment. "So long, Earth," he muttered under his breath. "Don't let the aliens trash the place while we're gone." Hours later, as Earth shrank to a blue marble in the view screen, Jack sat in his quarters aboard the massive torn asunder. He pulled out a small, worn photo from his pocket, a picture of stubborn Pete, grizzled and cantankerous as ever. A rare smile crossed Jack's face as he remembered the old animal. "All right, Pete," he muttered. "Time to show these aliens what real stubbornness looks like." The ship's intercom crackled to life. "All personnel, prepare for FTL jump. We are now beginning our journey to the Universal Council's territory. Estimated travel time 3 months, 2 weeks, 4 days." Jack tucked the photo away and headed for the briefing room, his face once again a mask of stern determination. It was time to learn exactly how humanity planned to strong-arm its way into galactic politics and what role a grunt like him would play in it all. Whatever came next, Jack "Bulldog" Cooper would face it the only way he knew how, head-on, with brute force and unwavering resolve. The low hum of the torn asunder's FTL drive permeated every deck of the massive battleship. 2 weeks into their journey, Sergeant Jack Cooper had settled into a routine that was equal parts monotonous and surreal. The stars outside the viewports were streaks of light, a constant reminder that they were hurtling through space at speeds his ancestors could only have dreamed of. Jack's days began at 0500 hours ship time, with a grueling PT session in the vessel's expansive gym. He pushed himself and his squad harder than ever, knowing that their physical condition could mean the difference between life and death if diplomacy failed. "Come on, you lazy bastards," Jack bellowed as his Marines strained through their final set of deadlifts. "You think the aliens are going to roll out the red carpet for a bunch of soft earthers? Show me what you're made of." Private Rodriguez, gasping for breath, managed to eke out one last rep before collapsing onto the deck. Jack allowed himself a small nod of approval. The kid was improving. After PT came breakfast in the mess hall, where the conversation inevitably turned to speculation about their mission. Jack kept his opinions to himself, focusing instead on the surprisingly palatable synthesized eggs and bacon. "I heard the aliens have technology that can read minds," one young Corporal whispered excitedly. "What if they already know why we're coming?" "Shut it," Morris Jack growled, silencing the table. "You've got shit for brains if you believe every rumor floating around this tub. Focus on your training and leave the thinking to the brass." The rest of Jack's mornings were filled with tactical briefings and strategy sessions. The ship's officers laid out countless scenarios, each more outlandish than the last. Peaceful first contact, hostile engagement, overt infiltration. Jack's head spun with the possibilities, but he focused on what he knew best: close quarters combat and shipboard security. Afternoons were dedicated to drills. Jack and his squad practiced boarding actions, repelling boarders, and securing critical areas of the ship. The torn asunder was a labyrinth of corridors and access tubes, and Jack was determined to know every inch of it. As he watched his Marines move through a simulated alien incursion, Jack couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. They were Earth's finest, ready to face whatever the galaxy might throw at them. But a nagging doubt lingered in the back of his mind. Would brute force be enough out here among the stars? In the rare moments of downtime, Jack found himself drawn to the ship's agricultural deck. The vast hydroponics bay was a slice of home amid the sterile military environment. Rows of wheat, corn, and vegetables stretched out under artificial sunlight, tended by busy agribots and a small team of specialists. It was here, surrounded by the familiar sense of soil and growing things, that Jack allowed himself to remember. He thought of the farm he'd left behind, of summer days spent baling hay and mending fences. And always, his thoughts returned to stubborn Pete, the old donkey that had been his constant companion. One evening, as Jack stood watching the wheat sway gently in the recycled breeze, he felt a presence beside him. He turned to see Captain Hunter Goldsmith, the ship's XO, regarding him with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "Didn't expect to find you here, Sergeant," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "I thought you lived in the gym." Jack straightened, embarrassed to be caught in a moment of nostalgia. "Just checking on the crops, sir, making sure our rations will hold out." Goldsmith's eyebrow arched skeptically. "Uh-huh. And I suppose that has nothing to do with the fact that you grew up on a farm in Oklahoma." Jack's eyes narrowed. "With all due respect, sir, how do you know that?" "It's my job to know my crew," Cooper Goldsmith replied, crossing his arms. "Especially the ones who might be key to this mission's success." He paused, studying Jack with piercing blue eyes. "You don't like this diplomatic approach, do you?" Jack chose his words carefully. "I'm a Marine, sir. I go where I'm told and do what needs doing. But no, diplomacy isn't my strong suit." Goldsmith nodded, a wry smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Fair enough. But remember, Sergeant, sometimes the strongest warrior is the one who knows when not to fight." He turned to leave, then added over his shoulder, "Your secret's safe with me, by the way." "About the farming thing." As Goldsmith's footsteps faded, Jack turned back to the gently swaying wheat. He pulled out the worn photo of stubborn Pete and smiled ruefully. "What do you think, old boy?" he murmured. "Think we can teach these aliens a thing or two about being stubborn?" The photo, of course, remained silent, but as Jack tucked it away and headed back to his quarters, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the same determination and grit that had seen him through life on the farm and years in the Corps. The journey to the Alien Council's territory stretched on, each day bringing them closer to a confrontation that would shape the future of humanity. And Sergeant Jack Bulldog Cooper, with his hidden soft spot for a stubborn old donkey, would be right in the middle of it all. The klaxon's shrill cry jolted Sergeant Jack Cooper from his bunk. He was on his feet and halfway into his combat suit before the announcement even began. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, all hands to battle stations. Jack's heart raced as he finished suiting up and sprinted towards his assigned post. After 3 months of monotonous travel, they had finally arrived at the edge of alien space. He'd known this moment was coming, but the reality of it sent a jolt of adrenaline through his system. As he rounded a corner, he nearly collided with Private Rodriguez. The young Marine's face was pale, but his jaw was set with determination. "Stay frosty," Kid Jack growled, clapping him on the shoulder. "Remember your training." They arrived at the ship's primary defensive control room just as Captain Goldsmith was addressing the assembled crew. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the border of Universal Council space," Goldsmith announced, his voice steady. "Long-range sensors have detected a patrol fleet moving to intercept. Our mission now enters its critical phase." Jack took his place at the weapons console, fingers hovering over the controls. Through the view screen, he could see other ships of the human fleet moving into formation around the torn asunder. It was an impressive sight, a display of humanity's military might that sent a surge of pride through him. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet." Goldsmith nodded. "Put it through." The view screen flickered, and Jack found himself staring at his first alien. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, scaly blue-green skin, and what looked like gills fluttering on its neck. When it spoke, its voice was a series of clicks and whistles, instantly translated by the ship's AI. "Unidentified vessels, you have entered restricted space. State your purpose and prepare to be boarded for inspection." Jack's grip tightened on his console. The thought of aliens boarding their ship made his skin crawl. He glanced at Goldsmith, wondering how the captain would respond to such a demand. Goldsmith stepped forward, his posture radiating calm authority. "This is Captain Hunter Goldsmith of the Earthship torn asunder. We come as representatives of humanity, seeking an audience with the Universal Council. We will not submit to boarding." The alien's eyes blinked in rapid succession, a gesture Jack couldn't interpret. Was it surprise? Anger? "Your presence here is unprecedented," the alien responded after a pause. "No species has ever approached the Council uninvited. You will power down your weapons and engines and await further instructions." Jack could see Goldsmith's jaw clench. This was the moment of truth. Would they back down or push forward? "I'm afraid we can't do that," Goldsmith replied. "We come in peace, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. We request safe passage to the Council's seat of power." The alien's gills flared. "This is highly irregular. You will hold your position while we consult with our superiors." As the transmission cut off, tension filled the control room. Jack could feel sweat beating on his forehead inside his helmet. Part of him itched for a fight, to show these aliens what humanity was capable of. But another part, the part that still dreamed of wheat fields and remembered the gentle eyes of an old donkey, hoped for a peaceful resolution. Sergeant Cooper Goldsmith's voice cut through Jack's thoughts. "What's your assessment?" Jack straightened, surprised to be asked for his opinion. "Sir, their ships are in attack formation, but weapons aren't charged. I'd say they're trying to intimidate us, but they're not looking for a fight. Not yet, anyway." Goldsmith nodded. "Good eye, Sergeant. Let's hope it stays that way." He turned to address the room. "All stations, maintain alert status. Be ready for anything, but do not, I repeat, do not fire unless fired upon." The minutes stretched into hours as they waited for the alien's response. Jack's muscles ached from the tension of holding himself ready. He found himself thinking of stubborn Pete, of how the old donkey would plant his hooves and refuse to budge when he didn't want to do something. Right now, the human fleet was doing the same thing on a cosmic scale. Finally, the alien commander reappeared on the view screen. "After much deliberation, we have been instructed to escort you to the Council's capital world," the alien announced, its tone unreadable. "But be warned, any aggressive action will be met with immediate and overwhelming force." Jack could almost feel the collective exhale of relief from the crew. They had passed the first test. As the human fleet began to move, flanked by the alien patrol ships, Jack allowed himself a small smile. They were in, but he knew this was just the beginning. The real challenge lay ahead. "Hey, Bulldog," Rodriguez whispered from the next console over. "Think they've got any idea what they're in for?" Jack thought about the destructive power hidden within the torn asunder of the sheer determination that had driven humanity to cross the stars uninvited. "Not a clue," Kitty replied. "Not a damn clue." As they moved deeper into alien space, Jack couldn't shake a feeling of foreboding. They had come seeking peace, but had brought the means for war. He just hoped the diplomats knew what they were doing. Because if they didn't, it would be up to Marines like him to deal with the consequences. The journey to the Universal Council's capital world took 3 days. 3 days of uneasy escort through alien space, with tensions running high on both sides. Sergeant Jack Cooper spent most of that time at his station, eyes glued to the tactical displays, watching for any sign of trouble. As they traveled, the alien escort grew. What had started as a small patrol fleet swelled into an armada. Sleek, crystalline ships that seemed to bend light around them. Massive, organic-looking vessels that pulsed with an inner glow. Strange, geometric constructs that defied human understanding of spaceship design. "Quite the welcoming committee," Captain Goldsmith remarked dryly as another group of alien ships fell into formation around them. "Sergeant Cooper, what's your read on their capabilities?" Jack studied the sensor data scrolling across his screen. "Hard to say for certain, sir. Some of their tech is way beyond ours. But others," he paused, frowning. "Some of these ships look like they'd fall apart if you sneezed at them. It's a mixed bag." Goldsmith nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Interesting. Almost as if they're putting on a show. Trying to impress us, perhaps." "Or intimidate us," Jack added. "Perhaps both," Goldsmith mused. "Keep a close eye on them, Sergeant. I want to know if any of them so much as twitch in our direction." As they drew closer to their destination, the fleet admiral made the decision to demonstrate humanity's own technological prowess. On the second day of their journey, the human ships began to shift formation. It started slowly at first. A cruiser here, a destroyer there, moving out of position. Then, with a synchronicity that spoke of countless drills and simulations, the entire fleet began to move as one. Ships weaved between each other in an intricate dance, forming complex geometric patterns before seamlessly reforming their escort formation. Jack couldn't help but grin as he watched the alien vessels react. Some pulled back, weapons ports opening. Others moved closer, as if trying to get a better look. Through it all, the human fleet moved with precision and grace that would have been impossible without their advanced AI navigation systems. "Now that's how you make an entrance," Jack muttered. Private Rodriguez, who had been rotated to the sensor station, let out a low whistle. "Think they're impressed, Sarge." "They better be," Jack replied. "That's not even the half of what we can do." As he said it, Jack felt a twinge of unease. The show of force was impressive, yes, but it was also a reminder of why they were here. The power to destroy worlds, hidden within the torn asunder the threat that lay beneath their diplomatic overtures. Jack's thoughts were interrupted by a gasp from Rodriguez. "Sarge, you've got to see this." The main view screen flickered to life, showing their destination. The alien capital world hung in space before them, a sight that took Jack's breath away. It wasn't a planet, not in any conventional sense. Instead, it was a massive construct, a perfect sphere that dwarfed even the largest ships in the alien armada. Its surface was a patchwork of environments: oceans, forests, deserts, and gleaming cities, all held together by some incomprehensible technology. "My God," someone whispered. Jack wasn't sure if it was him or not. As they drew closer, more details became visible. Ships of all sizes docked and departed from ports scattered across the sphere's surface. Energy fields shimmered, protecting the artificial atmosphere. And at the heart of it all, a massive structure rose from the surface, reaching towards the stars, the seat of the Universal Council. Jack felt a mix of emotions wash over him: awe at the sheer scale and beauty of what he was seeing, pride in humanity's achievement in reaching this place, and a gnawing fear of what might happen if their mission failed. All hands, this is Captain Goldsmith. The intercom crackled to life. We are beginning our final approach to the Council world. All personnel, prepare for potential first contact scenarios. And remember, we are here as representatives of Earth. Let's show them what humanity is made of. As the Torn Asunder and its escort moved towards their designated docking area, Jack found his hand straying to the pocket where he kept the photo of stubborn Pete. "What do you think, old boy?" he murmured. "Think they've got any use for a stubborn old farm boy like me in a place like this?" The photo, as always, remained silent. But as Jack looked back at the alien world growing larger in the view screen, he squared his shoulders and set his jaw. Whatever came next, he'd face it head-on. For Earth, for humanity, and for all those they'd left behind. The diplomatic dance was about to begin, and Sergeant Jack Bulldog Cooper was determined to be ready for anything. The docking process was a marvel of engineering and coordination. As the Torn Asunder eased into its berth alongside the colossal alien construct, Sergeant Jack Cooper felt the subtle shift in the ship's artificial gravity. They were now tethered to the alien world, physically linked to a civilization beyond human imagination. Docking complete. All systems nominal, the ship's AI announced, its calm voice a stark contrast to the tension Jack felt coiling in his gut. Captain Goldsmith's voice came over the intercom. "All hands, prepare for diplomatic reception. Security teams to your designated areas. Remember, we are guests here, but we are also representatives of Earth. Conduct yourselves accordingly." Jack double-checked his dress uniform, making sure every medal and insignia was perfectly aligned. He hated the stiff fabric, so different from his usual combat gear, but he understood the necessity. Today, appearance mattered as much as ability. Looking sharp, Sarge Private Rodriguez commented as they made their way to their assigned posts. The young Marine was trying to sound confident, but Jack could see the nervousness in his eyes. "Just remember your training," Kid Jack replied gruffly, "and try not to stare too much. These aliens probably think we look just as weird as they do." They took up their positions in the main reception area, a cavernous space that had been hastily converted for diplomatic use. Jack's eyes swept the room, noting potential security risks, escape routes, and defensible positions. Old habits died hard. The wait seemed interminable. Jack could feel sweat beading on his forehead, and he resisted the urge to wipe it away. He needed to appear calm, unflappable, a rock-solid representation of humanity's strength. Finally, the airlock cycled. Jack's hand instinctively twitched towards a sidearm that wasn't there, and he forced himself to relax. The alien delegation entered. Jack had seen images and holograms during the briefings, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. The aliens were a diverse group, each species more bizarre than the last. Some floated on anti-gravity platforms, others slithered or crawled. One appeared to be a sentient cloud of gas contained within a translucent sphere. At their head was a tall, slender being with iridescent skin and 4 arms. Its eyes, Jack counted 6 of them, moved independently, taking in every detail of the human reception. Captain Goldsmith stepped forward, arms open in what they hoped was a universal gesture of welcome. "Esteemed representatives of the Universal Council," he began, his voice steady and clear. "On behalf of humanity and the planet Earth, we bid you welcome aboard the Torn Asunder." The lead alien's skin shifted colors, a ripple of blue and green that Jack interpreted as surprise or possibly amusement. When it spoke, its voice was a harmonic blend of tones that the ship's translation system rendered into English. "We accept your welcome, humans of Earth," it said, "though we must express our astonishment at your arrival. Never in the history of the Council has a species presented itself in such a manner." Jack tensed, sensing the underlying tension in the alien's words. He glanced at Goldsmith, wondering how the captain would respond. Goldsmith's smile never wavered. "We are a species that believes in direct action, esteemed representatives. We come seeking friendship and alliance with the Universal Council, and we felt that the best way to demonstrate our sincerity was to come in person." The lead alien's colors shifted again, this time to a deep purple, a bold strategy. Some might call it reckless, others provocative. "We prefer to think of it as decisive," Goldsmith countered smoothly, But please, let us not stand on ceremony. We have much to discuss, and we're eager to learn more about the Council and its members. As the formal introductions began, Jack found his attention drawn to one of the alien security personnel. The creature was massive, easily 8 feet tall, with a carapace that looked like it could deflect small arms fire. Its 4 eyes were fixed on Jack, and he had the unsettling feeling that it was sizing him up just as he was doing to it. Jack met its gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of what might have been respect in those alien eyes. The diplomatic niceties seemed to drag on forever. Jack maintained his rigid posture, but his mind was racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The aliens were being polite, but there was an undercurrent of tension, of barely concealed hostility. As the delegation moved deeper into the ship for a tour and preliminary discussions, Jack fell into step behind them, ever vigilant. He couldn't help but think of the ship's hidden power, the terrible weapon that was their ace in the hole. Did the aliens suspect? Did they have any idea of the destruction that lurked beneath the diplomatic smiles and polite conversation? Jack's hand brushed against his pocket, feeling the familiar outline of the photo of stubborn Pete. In that moment, he wished for some of the old donkey's calm stubbornness, the kind of steadfast resolve that could weather any storm. Because as he watched the aliens marvel at human technology and exchange pleasantries with the ship's officers, Jack Cooper knew one thing for certain: this was just the calm before the storm. The real test was yet to come. And when it did, he would be ready. For Earth, for humanity, for everything and everyone they'd left behind in their audacious journey to the stars. The conference room aboard the torn asunder hummed with tension. Sergeant Jack Cooper stood at attention near the entrance, his eyes constantly scanning the assembled delegates. The room was a blend of human and alien technology, hastily adapted to accommodate the various physiologies of the Universal Council representatives. At the head of the long table sat Admiral Helena Vance, Earth's chief diplomat for this mission. Jack had only seen her a few times during the journey, but her reputation preceded her. A veteran of countless negotiations, both on Earth and with the few alien species humanity had encountered in their own territory, Vance was humanity's best hope for a peaceful resolution. Opposite her sat the lead alien, the iridescent, 6-eyed being that had first greeted them. Jack had learned its name was Zaxlath, and it held a position roughly equivalent to a prime minister in the council. Admiral Vance stood, her crisp uniform a stark contrast to the varied attire of the alien delegates. Esteemed representatives of the Universal Council, she began, her voice clear and confident. We come before you today with a proposition unprecedented in your history. We, the people of Earth, formally request membership in the Universal Council. A ripple of color passed through several of the alien delegates. The translators worked overtime, converting a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses into comprehensible language. Zaxlath's skin shifted to a deep blue. Admiral Vance, while we appreciate the directness of your approach, you must understand our hesitation. Never before has a species simply appeared at our doorstep, demanding entrance to our alliance. Not demanding, Vance corrected smoothly, requesting, and offering much in return. She gestured, and a holographic display sprang to life in the center of the table. It showed the Milky Way galaxy, with human-controlled space highlighted. In the span of just a few centuries, we have expanded across a significant portion of our galaxy. Our technology, while perhaps not as advanced as some of yours in all areas, has allowed us to terraform worlds, harness the power of stars, and cross vast distances of space. The display changed, showing various human achievements: massive orbital habitats, ships capable of faster-than-light travel, advanced AI systems. We offer this knowledge, freely shared, to all members of the Council. But more than that, we offer our spirit of exploration, our drive to push beyond boundaries. We believe we can be a valuable addition to your alliance. Jack watched the aliens closely as Vance spoke. Some seemed impressed, others skeptical. The massive, carapaced security alien he'd noticed earlier remained impassive, but its eyes never left the holographic display. Zaxlath leaned forward. "An impressive presentation, Admiral, but it raises questions. If your species is so capable, why do you seek to join us? What do you hope to gain? Vance's expression remained neutral, but Jack could see the slight tension in her shoulders. This was the crux of the matter. We seek knowledge, Zax laughed. The wisdom of ages that the Council represents. We seek peaceful coexistence and mutual benefit. But most of all, we seek to prevent conflict. The room grew still at her words. Jack felt his hand unconsciously move towards his hip, where his sidearm would normally be. Vance continued, her voice grave. Our history is marked by conflict. We have fought among ourselves for millennia, but we have learned from our mistakes. We do not wish to repeat them on a galactic scale. One of the other aliens, a being that seemed to be composed entirely of crystalline structures, chimed in. Its voice was like wind through chimes. Are you saying, Admiral, that you fear war with the Council? We fear the unknown, Vance replied carefully, and in our experience, fear often leads to conflict. By joining the Council, we hope to replace that fear with understanding, to become partners rather than potential adversaries. The room erupted in a flurry of alien languages. Jack tensed, ready for anything, but Captain Goldsmith, standing near the other end of the room, caught his eye and gave a subtle shake of his head. Stand down, the gesture said. Not yet. Zax Lath raised all four of its arms, quieting the commotion. Its skin had taken on a deep, pulsing red. Admiral Vance, your words are troubling. They sound dangerously close to a threat. Vance shook her head. Not a threat, Zax Lath. A reality we hope to avoid. We. She was cut off as alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Jack immediately moved to a defensive position, his training taking over. Captain Goldsmith's voice came over the intercom, tense but controlled. Admiral Vance, we're detecting a massive energy buildup from the Council world. Multiple weapons platforms are powering up and targeting our fleet. The room descended into chaos. Alien delegates rose in confusion and alarm. The crystalline being seemed to vibrate with anxiety, while the gaseous entity's containment sphere pulsed rapidly. Jack locked eyes with the carapaced security alien across the room. There was no confusion in those alien eyes, only grim determination. Whatever was happening, this alien had expected it. Admiral Vance's voice cut through the din. Zax Lath, what is the meaning of this? The alien leader's skin had turned a deep, stormy gray. All six of its eyes focused on Vance. I think, Admiral, that the real negotiations are about to begin. The question is no longer whether you will join us, but whether we will allow your species to continue to exist at all. As the words left the translator, Jack felt a chill run down his spine. This was it, the moment they had prepared for, hoped to avoid, but deep down always expected. The real test of humanity's resolve was about to begin, and Sergeant Jack Cooper was ready to face it head-on. As the alarms continued to blare, he found himself thinking of stubborn Pete, of the farm back on Earth, of all that was at stake. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain: humanity would not go quietly into the night. They had come too far, risked too much, to back down now. The universe was about to learn just how stubborn humans could be. The alarms continued to blare as Sergeant Jack Cooper moved swiftly into action. With practiced efficiency, he and his squad secured the conference room, their weapons drawn but not yet aimed at the alien delegates. Admiral Vance's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and authoritative. Zax Lath, I implore you to reconsider. This course of action will only lead to conflict, a conflict that will benefit neither of us. The alien leader's skin rippled with dark, stormy colors. You misunderstand, Admiral. The decision has already been made. Your species is too volatile, too unpredictable to be allowed free rein in the galaxy. The Council has spoken. Captain Goldsmith's voice crackled over the intercom once more. Admiral, we're detecting power surges in multiple alien vessels. They're charging weapons. Jack's grip tightened on his weapon. This was it, the moment they had trained for, hoped to avoid, but ultimately expected. He caught Rodriguez's eye across the room, giving a subtle nod. The young private's face was pale, but his stance was firm. They were ready. Admiral Vance straightened, her expression hardening. Very well, Zax laughed. If this is your final decision, then you leave us no choice. She tapped her comm badge. Vance to Fleet Command. Initiate Protocol Omega. Authorization Vance 777 Alpha Tango. A chill ran down Jack's spine. Protocol Omega, the last resort. The ultimate display of human determination and firepower. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but deep down, he had known it was always a possibility. Zax Lath's eyes widened, all six of them focusing on Vance with sudden intensity. What have you done? The alien demanded, its harmonics translator struggling to convey the mix of anger and fear in its voice. Vance's reply was cold. I've given you one last chance to reconsider, Zax Lath. In approximately 5 minutes, you're going to witness firsthand why challenging humanity might be the biggest mistake your council has ever made. She turned to Jack. Sergeant Cooper, escort our guests to observation deck Alpha. I believe they should see this with their own eyes. Yes, ma'am, Jack responded crisply. He signaled to his squad. You heard the Admiral. Move EM out. The alien delegates, a mix of confusion, fear, and indignation on their varied faces, were ushered out of the conference room. Jack found himself next to the massive, carapaced security alien as they moved through the corridors. You knew, Jack said quietly, not looking directly at the alien. You knew this was going to happen. The alien's response was a low rumble, translated into a growl. We suspected. Your kind are not the first to try to force their way into the council. You will not be the first to fail. Jack allowed himself a grim smile. Don't be so sure about that. You haven't seen what we can do yet. They arrived at Observation Deck Alpha, a vast chamber with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of space and the massive alien construct that was the council's capital. The human fleet was arrayed before them, facing off against the now hostile alien armada. As the delegates were positioned near the windows, Jack couldn't help but feel a twinge of awe and fear. The alien ships were numerous and varied, some of them dwarfing even the largest human vessels. In any normal combat situation, the human fleet would be hopelessly outmatched. But this was no normal situation. Admiral Vance's voice came over the ship-wide comm. Attention all hands. This is Admiral Vance. Negotiations with the Universal Council have failed. They have made it clear that humanity's extinction is preferable to our inclusion. We are now initiating Protocol Omega. All personnel, prepare for immediate action. May God have mercy on us all. A hush fell over the observation deck. Jack could feel the tension radiating from both his fellow humans and the alien delegates. He found his hand straying to his pocket, feeling the outline of the photograph of stubborn Pete. In that moment, he drew strength from the memory of the old donkey's unwavering determination. Suddenly, the space before them lit up with weapons fire. The alien fleet had opened fire, energy beams and projectiles streaking towards the human ships. Jack tensed, expecting to see explosions, the destruction of the fleet he had come to see as home. But the shots never landed. Instead, they seemed to bend around the human ships, as if deflected by an invisible force. Jack allowed himself a small, fierce grin. The alien delegates gasped and murmured in shock. Then, the human fleet responded. It started with the smaller ships. Destroyers and frigates suddenly shimmered and vanished, reappearing inside the alien formation. They opened fire with weapons that seemed to ignore shields and armor alike, cutting through alien vessels with surgical precision. The larger human ships began to glow, energy building around them in halos of barely contained power. When they fired, it wasn't with conventional weapons. Instead, lances of pure energy shot forth, each one capable of bisecting an alien capital ship. And at the center of it all, the torn asunder began to transform. Sections of the hull shifted and changed, revealing weapon systems unlike anything the universe had ever seen. Jack turned to the carapaced alien, whose eyes were wide with disbelief. Still think we're going to fail, he asked, unable to keep a note of pride from his voice. But even as he watched the display of humanity's technological might, Jack felt a knot forming in his stomach. This wasn't a battle, it was a slaughter. And he knew that what was coming next would be even worse. As the human fleet decimated the alien armada, the torn asunder turned its attention to the Council's capital world. Jack could see the fear in the alien delegates' eyes as they realized what was about to happen. In that moment, Sergeant Jack Cooper, the farm boy who had dreamed of the stars, who had thought he understood the meaning of strength, felt the weight of the universe on his shoulders. They had come seeking peace, but were about to unleash unimaginable destruction. As the torn asunder prepared to fire its ultimate weapon, Jack closed his eyes, thinking of Earth, of home, of everything that had led to this moment. When he opened them again, he was ready to face whatever came next. The observation deck of the torn asunder was eerily silent as the human fleet decimated the alien armada. Sergeant Jack Cooper watched the carnage unfold, a mix of awe and horror churning in his gut. The alien delegates stood frozen, their varied physiologies united in stunned disbelief. Admiral Vance's voice cut through the silence, cold and resolute. "Attention all hands. Prepare for deployment of the Omega device. T-minus 60 seconds. Jack's hand unconsciously moved to his pocket, feeling the outline of stubborn Pete's photo. He thought of home, of the farm, of a simpler life where the fate of entire worlds didn't hang in the balance. But there was no going back now. Omega device Zach Slath's translator struggled to convey the mix of fear and rage in its voice. "What manner of weapon is this?" Jack turned to the alien leader, his face a mask of grim determination. "Something we hoped we'd never have to use. A last resort." The massive form of the torn asunder began to change once more. Sections of the hull peeled back, revealing a pulsing core of energy that seemed to bend the very fabric of space around it. As the weapon charged, reality itself seemed to warp and twist. T-minus 30 seconds came the ship's AI announcement. Jack found himself standing next to the carapaced security alien. Their eyes met, and for a moment Jack saw a reflection of his own conflict in those alien orbs. "Is this truly the path your species chooses?" the alien asked, its voice a low rumble. Jack's reply was barely a whisper. "Sometimes the only choices left are the ones we never wanted to make." T-minus 10 seconds. The pulsing energy at the core of the torn asunder reached a fever pitch. Jack could feel it in his bones, a vibration that seemed to resonate with the universe itself. 5, 4, 3, 2. A lance of pure, blinding energy erupted from the ship, streaking towards the Council's capital world. For a moment, it seemed as if nothing had happened. Then, reality itself seemed to fracture. The massive construct that housed the Universal Council began to break apart, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. It was as if the very atoms that composed it were being torn asunder, the bonds of matter itself giving way to an incomprehensible force. In a matter of seconds, the pride of the Universal Council, home to trillions of beings, simply ceased to exist. Where once there had been a marvel of cosmic engineering, there was now only a rapidly expanding cloud of subatomic particles. The silence that followed was deafening. Jack felt numb, the weight of what they had just done threatening to crush him. He looked around the observation deck, seeing the same shock and horror reflected in the faces of humans and aliens alike. Admiral Vance's voice, when it came over the comms, sounded tired and heavy. "All ships, stand down from combat status. The threat has been neutralized." She paused, and Jack could hear the weariness in her next words. "It appears that diplomacy has failed us. The burden of what comes next, it shouldn't be mine to bear. It is time to let the men do what the men do best: war." There was another pause, longer this time. When Vance spoke again, her voice was filled with a mix of resignation and resolve. "Effective immediately, I am stepping down as Fleet Admiral. It's clear that we've moved beyond the realm of diplomacy. Perhaps it's time to let those more suited to the harsh realities of war take the helm." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't a victory. It was the beginning of something far darker. Captain Goldsmith's voice came next, steady and controlled. "Understood, Admiral. We'll take it from here. All hands prepare for potential counterattacks. This war has only just begun." As the reality of their situation sank in, Jack found himself looking out at the devastation they had wrought. They had come seeking peace, seeking to join a galactic community. Instead, they had become its destroyers. He thought of stubborn Pete, of the simple strength and determination the old donkey had represented. But stubbornness and strength weren't enough anymore. They were in uncharted territory now, facing challenges that went beyond anything he had ever trained for. As the torn asunder and the rest of the human fleet prepared for whatever would come next, Sergeant Jack Cooper realized that the true test of humanity's resolve was only just beginning. They had shown the universe their strength. Now they would have to live with the consequences. The stars seemed colder somehow, the vastness of space more oppressive. Humanity had made its mark on the galactic stage, but at what cost? And what sort of future had they carved out for themselves among the stars? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: the universe would never be the same again. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.